I was just a black waitress. Until a billionaire signed one paper and changed everything. What if a single signature could rewrite your entire story? What if kindness from a stranger could lift you from the edge of despair and place you somewhere you never dared to dream? That's exactly what happened to Marla Bennett, a 32-year-old waitress at Eddie's Diner on the worn-down corner of 5th and Main. She'd spent 8 years balancing plates and forcing smiles, her hands raw from scalding dishwater and her feet aching from double shifts. Every morning she'd tie that faded green apron around her waist, tuck a pencil behind her ear, and pretend the weight on her shoulders wasn't crushing her. But beneath that practiced smile lived a woman drowning in medical bills, past due notices, and the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones. She never imagined that one elderly man's daily coffee order would become the thread that pulled her life back together. Where are you watching from? Marla's alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 every morning, the same jarring sound that had greeted her for nearly a decade. She'd roll out of bed in the cramped studio apartment she shared with her younger sister, Riley, who was 23 and fighting leukemia. The medical bills arrived faster than Marla could pay them, stacking up on the kitchen counter like accusations. Riley's treatments cost more than Marla made in 6 months, even with insurance that barely covered anything. Each envelope she opened felt like another door slamming shut on any future she'd once imagined. Eddie's Diner wasn't much to look at. The vinyl booths were patched with duct tape, the coffee always tasted slightly burnt, and the regulars were mostly truck drivers and early morning construction workers who tipped in quarters. But Marla knew every customer by name, remembered how they liked their eggs, asked about their grandkids. She'd learned that kindness cost nothing, and sometimes it was the only currency that mattered. Then there was Mr. Whitmore. He'd started coming in about 6 months ago, always at 6:15 in the morning, always sitting in booth 7 by the window. He wore expensive suits that looked out of place among the cracked linoleum and flickering fluorescent lights. Salt and pepper hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and hands that trembled slightly when he lifted his coffee cup. He'd order black coffee and wheat toast, leave a $20 bill for a $4 meal, and read the newspaper in silence. Marla never asked why a man who clearly had money would choose Eddie's over the fancy cafes downtown. She just refilled his coffee, smiled genuinely, and sometimes they'd talk. He'd ask how her morning was going, and she'd tell him the truth in small doses. About Riley's treatments. About working 16-hour days. About how she'd dropped out of nursing school 7 years ago when their mother died and someone needed to take care of Riley. He listened like her words mattered, like her life wasn't just background noise. One Tuesday morning in late October, Mr. Whitmore looked different. His hands shook more than usual, and there were dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. When Marla set his coffee down, he caught her wrist gently. "Marla, may I ask you something personal?" His voice was soft, almost apologetic. She nodded, curious but cautious. "If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be?" The question caught her off guard. She glanced around the empty diner, at the clock ticking toward the breakfast rush, at her reflection in the stainless steel napkin holder. She looked tired, older than 32. "I'd make sure my sister gets better," she said finally. "Everything else I can handle." But watching her fade away, knowing I can't afford the treatments that might actually save her. Her voice cracked. She pulled away gently, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear that." "No," he said quietly. "I think I needed to hear exactly that." He left that morning without finishing his toast, and for the first time in 6 months, he didn't leave a tip. Marla told herself not to read into it, that maybe she'd made him uncomfortable with her honesty. But 3 days later, when he didn't show up for his usual coffee, she felt the absence like a missing puzzle piece. On the 4th day, when his booth stayed empty, she wondered if she'd ever see him again. She didn't know then that Mr. Whitmore was making phone calls, signing documents, and setting in motion a plan that would collide with her life like a freight train carrying nothing but grace. Mr. Whitmore returned on Monday morning, but he wasn't alone. A younger man in a tailored suit accompanied him, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Marla's rent. They slid into booth 7, and Mr. Whitmore waved her over with that familiar gentle smile. Marla, this is my attorney, David Chen, he said. Would you mind sitting with us for a moment? I promise it won't take long. Her heart hammered against her ribs. People didn't bring lawyers to diners unless something was wrong. Had she done something? Said something that could be misconstrued? She wiped her hands on her apron and sat on the edge of the booth, ready to bolt. Mr. Whitmore reached across the table and placed a folder in front of her. His hands were steadier today, but his eyes held something she couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe. Or peace. I'm dying, Marla, he said simply. No preamble, no sugarcoating. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 2 months, probably less. He said it the way someone might mention the weather, but Marla saw the truth in the tightness around his mouth. I'm so sorry, she whispered, and meant it with her whole heart. Don't be. I've lived 83 remarkable years, made my fortune in real estate, lost my wife to Alzheimer's 5 years ago, buried both my sons in separate car accidents a decade apart. His voice didn't waver, but the weight of those losses hung in the air like smoke. I have no family left. No one who needs what I've built. And I've spent the last 6 months watching you pour every ounce of yourself into saving your sister, working yourself to the bone with more grace and kindness than most people manage on their best days. He pushed the folder toward her. Open it. Inside were documents she didn't understand at first. Legal terms, numbers with too many zeros, her name typed over and over again. She looked up, confused and frightened. I'm establishing a trust fund for Riley's medical care, Mr. Whitmore said. Every treatment she needs, every medication, every specialist. It's handled. Completely covered. He paused, watching her face. And I'm setting up an education fund for you. So you can go back to nursing school. Or do anything else you've dreamed of doing. Marla's vision blurred. She shook her head, pushing the folder back across the table like it might burn her. I can't accept this. I haven't done anything to deserve. You made an old man's last month's bearable, he interrupted gently. You smiled at me like I mattered, not like I was just another customer. You shared your truth with me when I asked. That's more valuable than you know. His eyes glistened. I have no one to leave my money to, Marla. Let me do this one good thing before I go. Let me help save your sister. Let me give you back the life you sacrificed. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Riley could live. Actually live, not just survive. Marla could finish school, could stop drowning. But before she could process any of it, before she could say yes or thank you or anything at all, Eddie's voice boomed from the kitchen. Marla! Orders up. You planning to work today, or what? Reality crashed back. She had tables to serve, bills to pay today, a life that couldn't pause for miracles. She looked at Mr. Whitmore, at the folder that held impossible hope, and whispered, Can I think about it? Of course, he said. But don't think too long. Time isn't a luxury either of us has. She stood on shaking legs and returned to work, the folder's weight burning into her memory. She didn't know that by tomorrow morning, everything would get infinitely more complicated. Word spread through Eddie's diner like wildfire through dry grass. By Tuesday afternoon, every regular knew a rich man was trying to give Marla money. By Wednesday, opinions were flying faster than hash browns. You sure he doesn't want something in return? This from Dottie, a long-time customer who'd seen every scam under the sun. She squinted at Marla over her coffee mug, suspicion carved into every wrinkle. Nobody gives away money for free, honey, added Frank, a retired cop who ate lunch at the counter every day. What's the catch? There's always a catch. Even Eddie pulled her aside, his grease-stained apron and concerned frown making him look like a worried father. Marla, I'm just saying be careful. Rich people don't do charity cases out of the goodness of their hearts. They want something. Control, maybe. Or publicity. The doubt seeped into her bones like cold rain. She'd wanted to believe in Mr. Whitmore's kindness, wanted to believe miracles could happen without strings attached. But everyone she trusted was warning her away, and their concern felt suffocating. What if they were right? What if she was being naive, stupid even, for considering this? Riley noticed the change immediately when Marla came home that night. Her sister was curled up on the couch, a blanket covering her thin frame, the chemotherapy leaving her weak but still fighting. "What's wrong?" Riley asked, her voice raspy. Marla told her everything. About Mr. Whitmore, the trust fund, the education money, the warnings from people who cared about her. She told her about the doubt gnawing at her gut, the fear that accepting help made her weak or foolish or both. Riley was quiet for a long moment, her thin fingers playing with the edge of her blanket. Then she said something that changed everything. "When Mom was dying, remember what she told us?" Riley's eyes met Marla's, clear and bright despite her illness. She said sometimes angels show up looking like ordinary people, and the only sin is being too proud to let them help. "You've carried me on your back for 7 years, March. You dropped your dreams, worked until your hands bled, chose my life over yours every single day. Maybe it's okay to let someone carry you for once." Marla's throat tightened. She'd been so focused on protecting Riley, on being strong enough for both of them, that she'd forgotten how to receive grace. How to trust that sometimes kindness was just kindness, no ulterior motives required. The next morning, she found Mr. Whitmore in booth 7, looking frilier than before. The cancer was moving fast. She could see it in the yellow tinge of his skin, the way his suit hung loose on his shrinking frame. She slid into the booth across from him and said, "Yes." His face transformed. Pure joy, the kind that makes elderly eyes sparkle like a child's on Christmas morning. "You'll accept the trust?" "On one condition," Marla said, her voice steady now. "You let me spend whatever time you have left being your friend. Not your charity case. Your friend. You come here every morning, I'll pour your coffee, and we'll talk about real things. Life things. Because I think maybe you're as lonely as I am scared, and maybe we both need someone who understands." Mr. Whitmore's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "I'd like that very much. Have you ever faced something like this? Have you ever had to choose between pride and hope? Let us know in the comments." David Chen opened his briefcase right there in the booth, and Mr. Whitmore signed paper after paper with a shaking hand. When he signed the final document, Marla felt her entire world shift on its axis. Riley would live. She could dream again. And for the next 6 weeks, she would make sure James Whitmore knew he mattered right up until the very end. But she didn't know yet that the real transformation was just beginning, or that James Whitmore had one more surprise waiting. The next 6 weeks became a sacred rhythm. Every morning at 6:15, James Whitmore shuffled into Eddie's diner, moving slower each day but always smiling when he saw Marla. They'd talk about everything and nothing. He told her about building his first apartment building at 25 with borrowed money and audacity. About his late wife Eleanor, who'd made him laugh until the Alzheimer's stole her away piece by piece. About his sons, Michael and Christopher, both gone too soon, and how their deaths had hollowed him out in ways he'd never fully healed from. Marla told him about her mother's final days, about the weight of responsibility that came with being Riley's keeper, about dreams of becoming a nurse that felt like someone else's memories now. They laughed over silly things, the way Eddie burned everything but somehow kept the diner running, the regular who insisted on eating breakfast food in reverse order, the stray cat that had adopted the alley behind the diner. Riley's treatments began immediately. Real treatments, not the bare minimum care they'd been scraping together. Experimental therapies from specialists who'd previously been fantasy names on wish lists. Within 3 weeks, color returned to Riley's cheeks. Within 5 weeks, she could walk without exhaustion, claiming her halfway across the room. The doctors used words like remission and remarkable progress, and Marla wept in hospital bathrooms where no one could see her fall apart with relief. But James was fading. Fast. By week 4, he needed help walking from his car to the booth. By week 5, David Chen accompanied him daily, carrying the oxygen tank James now needed. By week 6, James didn't come to the diner anymore. Marla visited him at his estate instead, a sprawling property that felt cold and empty despite its elegance. He was in bed, surrounded by machines and nurses, but his eyes still sparkled when she entered the room. "I have something for you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. David handed her an envelope, thick and official-looking. Inside was a deed to the property Eddie's diner sat on, her name typed clearly as the new owner. "James, I can't. Eddie's been renting month to month for 20 years, James interrupted, each word costing him effort. "I owned the building. Now you do. You can keep the diner running, or sell it, or turn it into something new. But you'll have security, options, freedom." He smiled weakly. "Besides, I liked knowing that Booth 7 would always be waiting for me. Now it will always be yours." Marla clutched the deed, tears streaming down her face. "Why me? Out of everyone in the world, why did you choose me?" James reached for her hand with fingers that felt like paper. "Because you saw me, Marla. Not my money, not my reputation. Just an old man who needed a friend and a decent cup of coffee. You gave me that without expecting anything in return. That's the rarest gift there is." If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. He died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. At the funeral, Marla learned that besides her and Riley, James had quietly paid off medical debts for 12 other families. He'd funded scholarships for kids who couldn't afford college. He'd saved Eddie's diner from foreclosure twice without Eddie ever knowing. He'd been an angel wearing an expensive suit and wire-rimmed glasses, spreading grace like seeds everywhere he went. But James Whitmore had one final surprise, one last gift that Marla wouldn't discover until the reading of his will. The lawyer's office felt like a place where important things happened. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs that creaked with authority, walls lined with law books that probably cost more than Marla's old car. David Chen sat across from her and Riley, his professional mask softened by genuine kindness. "James wanted me to read this part personally," David said, pulling out a handwritten letter. Marla recognized the shaky script immediately, James's handwriting in those final weeks, each letter a small victory against failing strength. "Dear Marla, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. Don't be sad, I got to leave this world knowing I mattered to someone, which is more than most people get. You gave an old man friendship when he needed it most. You let me feel useful again, purposeful, like my life still counted for something. I've left you the diner property, as you know. But there's more. I'm leaving you 30% of my remaining estate. David will explain the details, but it amounts to enough that you'll never have to worry about money again. Finish nursing school. Help others the way you helped Riley. Or don't. Travel the world, open a flower shop, do absolutely nothing if that's what brings you joy. The money comes with only one condition, that you promise to be as kind to yourself as you were to me. To let yourself rest sometimes. To accept that you deserve good things, not because you've earned them through suffering, but because you're human and all humans deserve grace. Tell Riley I expect her to beat this thing completely and live a long, ridiculously happy life. Tell Eddie his coffee is still terrible, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. And tell yourself every single day that you mattered to me. You changed my ending, Marla. You gave it meaning. With gratitude and affection, James Whitmore." The silence after David finished reading felt holy. Marla's hands trembled in her lap. 30% of James's estate was $8 million. $8 million from a man who'd asked nothing but friendship in return. Riley squeezed her sister's hand. "He was right about you, you know. You do deserve this." It took time for the reality to settle. Marla paid off every bill, every debt that had haunted her for years. She enrolled in nursing school that fall, sitting in classes with students 10 years younger but feeling right for the first time in forever. Riley went into full remission, started community college, began talking about becoming a social worker to help other families navigating medical crises. Eddie's diner stayed open, but Marla renovated it. New booths, better coffee, a memorial plaque on booth 7 that read, "Reserved for friends who need a listening ear." She hired 3 more staff members and paid them wages people could actually live on. The diner became known not just for breakfast, but for kindness, a place where anyone struggling could come for a free meal, no questions asked, no judgment given. 4 years later, Marla graduated nursing school at the top of her class. She specialized in hospice care, sitting with dying patients and their families, offering the same presence James had taught her mattered so profoundly. She'd learned that sometimes the greatest gift isn't saving someone's life. It's making sure they know their life meant something, that they were seen and valued right up until the end. Every morning before her shift, she still stopped by the diner, sat in booth 7, drank coffee that Eddie had finally learned to make properly. And she remembered the billionaire who'd signed one paper and changed everything, not because he wanted something in return, but because kindness was its own reward. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on Marla's journey. May you find your own angels wearing ordinary faces, and may you be that angel for someone else when the moment comes.